All right. Well, thank you all for coming. My name is Andy Paul. I'm from Fliweel.tech. We are an AI and automation consultancy. And firstly, thank you to Amy for hosting this beautiful space. I know that you can all probably agree that, we're really lucky to have this event in such a beautiful place. Accelerating AI was an idea that I kind of came up with the help of Qoob, Dragon, and Amy, as well as other partners here as well. So we wanted to bring together a community of people interested in this really hot topic in this particular time, and just kind of want to go straight into the first session. But before I do that, I just wanted to run through the agenda for today. So we've just finished off networking. We just completed the welcome, and I'm going to hand it over to Matt Eustace just after I finish to talk through AI in the modern workplace. Then at 10 a.m. I will do a session on value-driven AI for businesses. We'll have a quick 15-minute break at 10:30, and then at 10:45 Matt will join from Qoob to talk about AI in marketing. And then lastly at 11:15 to 11:45 will be a session run by Lionel on introducing Microsoft Copilot. After that we'll have a little wrap up, a quick survey, and we'll let everybody leave for the rest of the day. So with that said, I'm going to hand it over to Matt to take the mic.
Thank you very much. Good morning, everybody. So Matt Eustace from Aiimi. My role is looking after both IT and data protection, which is a sort of historical thing, but also explaining how our products and technology and services work and solve particular business problems. And obviously with us being a data and digital company, AI has over the last 2 or 3 years kind of exploded to the forefront of everyone's consciousness in terms of what they're thinking about. But AI is not new, and there are lots of sort of AI flavour capabilities that technology has been providing for quite some time. So I wanted to start talking a little bit about what some of those capabilities are that are actually pretty commoditized, they're low cost, they can be implemented very easily for organizations, and there's lots of open source options there as well. So that's the world of machine learning models, and they play a part in this understanding data, making sense of it, making it easily findable, consumable, and relatable. So some of the capabilities that you'll find in machine learning models are things like named entity recognition. So they are the capabilities to analyse natural language and pick out the names of things, so proper nouns, people, places, organisations, those kind of things. We've then got capabilities like phrase and topic detection, so again, natural language processing, understanding language and looking at what are the key things that are being said in passages of text and then picking those out. Various other capabilities. These are generally available free of charge and multilingual capable, and very cheap and easy to deploy, not requiring much in the way of hardware. So there are some capabilities out there that if you're not already using them, think about those and being able to plumb those into your systems and products and services without too much effort really. Also, another capability out there is being eclipsed by all the conversations about generative AI is extractive AI. So that's the ability to take pieces of text and answer a question from that text using that text and only that text. So extractive AI is generally a lot less cost intensive and resource intensive than generative AI. And it's also better at producing you exact facts because it's not going to generate some brand new text from the model. It's going to look at the information that you feed it and it's going to produce the facts and probably some sentences around that as well to illustrate that, make it more sort of consumable. Those models you can use for Q&A. They've got really good place in things like knowledge-based management. So if you imagine you produce products and services, you want to be able to give your customers self-service access to the information in your manuals, then extractive AI is really good at providing that very clear, concise answer to a question, citing the text around that and not making mistakes, not hallucinating an answer that's not actually correct, which is really important when you're providing, for instance, technical services and product to safety critical implementations. So that's extractive AI. Generative AI, obviously different. This is the ability of a model to be able to create brand new text. And it can do that in a couple of different ways. It can do that from the model itself, so produce some text from the learning that it's done on a corpus of information. You'll be familiar with ChatGPT. That's corpus of information that it was trained on was the internet. And when you ask it a question, it's producing new text off the back of that content. Another way of using generative AI is to combine that capability of producing language with prompt information you feed it, that it can then consume and add into that background information that it understands to produce content which is more specific to you. So there's a couple of approaches which I've already alluded to. First one is closed book, where you're asking the model itself a question. So again, that's ChatGPT. When you ask a question, the answer comes from the model and nothing else. The other, which we refer to as open book in Aiimi's world, is the ability to find information that's relevant from your corpus of information within the organisation and then feed that to the model to get an answer back. So there's a few things that you need to be able to do that well. First is you really should be able to understand the person who's asking the question. And the reason you want to understand the person is if they're in HR, they want to find information from your HR platforms and your policy books and things like that and feed that into the model to get it to answer a question from that point of view. If you're in finance, you want a different set of information. If you're in technical services, you want a different set of information. So understanding who's asking the question in these kind of scenarios can be really useful to getting a better, more accurate output that is not sort of wandering off to the side and giving you information from other parts of the business. So that provides some baseline information for where we want to do a search. The next thing is semantic search. So we do a lot of research in Aiimi about how people ask questions, and it's really varied depending upon whether people have grown up with Google and whether they are they're very brief in the way that they ask questions as a personality trait thing here, or whether they're more expansive when they're asking questions of search engines. So you can have like a fully formed long sentence which gives you a lot of context about what they're asking, or you could have a more sort of keyword type search. So understanding what they're actually asking and whether it's a question and interpreting that will help you relevance rank the information that's returned to then feed into a large language model. The next thing is, once you know what someone's asking for, is to give them the results that they should have access to. So when you're implementing large language models and AI technology, one of the things you need to be concerned about is permissions on information. If someone is asking a question, you don't want them to be able to use your AI tech that you've just deployed to get information they shouldn't have access to through any other means. So that's one of the things that you need to consider when you're deploying these products. And we'll talk a little bit more about permissions in a moment. So once you've got that permission trimmed result set, the information that contains the facts that you're interested in, you can then at that point pass that safely onto an AI platform, and that can produce the answer from that information. So you're much more likely to get something which is contextually correct for your business and the person who's asking the question if you go through this process. And that's what Aiimi does with our products, is we build those frameworks which sort of tie these areas together. So going back to security, if you think about closed book, when you're asking the model itself a question, you've got no control when you're asking that question about what the model does to produce the answer. It's been trained on some information. It's going to use all of that information to produce you an answer to the question. So if there is salary information in there, if there is corporate IP, anything else like that, then that's going to come out of the model if it's been trained on that. The alternative, of course, the open book approach means that you are able to permission trim the information that goes into the model before it answers the question. That's a consideration when you think about the kinds of models that you use and the technology that you use to implement those. If you want to use what's called a pre-trained model, and you don't want to have the sort of search capability and that kind of thing built around the use of the model, then you're going to have to pre-train it, and you've got no capability to manage the permissions of the data. If you do the search side, you can then manage the permissions. The other thing that happens when you use an open book approach to large language models is that you can cite the results. You know where the information's come from. So the model can tell you, I've been given your prompt, your question, plus all of the documents that support that, or have the answers to that, and I've produced an answer from these places. So you will get an answer plus the places to go and check those facts. I will talk a little bit about prompts and hallucination, but one of the things that I've found with the research that we do is that models can be incredibly variable in the answers that they give you. 1 minute they can tell you, for instance, that a contract does meet your procurement policy by analysing that contract, and the next minute it'll say it doesn't. And it'll tell you quite convincingly why. Now there's ways that you can tune those models to make them less variable and more accurate. But you are constantly reminded when you work with these technologies that they are very, very difficult to get accuracy from. So you need to be able to cite and you need to be able to review and check. They work really, really well for producing letters and emails and apologies. They work quite well for summarization and those kind of things, but for actual facts, they can be quite variable, and you need to really know what you're doing when you're using these models to make sure that you can fact check everything before you send it outside the organisation. So the citation side is really important. Fine tuning. So when you take a model off the shelf, it's obviously got information that's come usually from public sources. Some of it is domain specific. So there are some industry specific models out there, but generally the information's come from particular sources like the web. And the process of fine-tuning is taking those models and giving them your information and making them much more specific to what you want to get out of them. So an example of that is you can fine-tune Q&A models, which allow you to ask questions and get answers in a format that would support a chatbot, for example. You've got to be a little bit careful with thinking about the way that you approach that. There are bigger models take an awful lot of hardware. So Falcon is a recently released model. It's one of the bigger ones, but that used £60 million worth of hardware just to do the training of the model. Now obviously you can do that with smaller corpuses and it's not going to be as expensive, but that gives you an indication of the kind of level of cost that's involved in fine-tuning. And also with fine-tuning you do then lose the ability to cite where the information's come from, but it can be more accurate if you've got a concise data set that you want to train on, such as if you've got a knowledge base for your products, you could use that as a training corpus. If it's got sort of a good description of what a problem is and then what the answer is, then that could be a good input. So that's fine-tuning. So here's some examples of some prompts, just to give you a bit of a flavour for what can go wrong with these things. So this is using Llama 2, I believe, as the model. So we're asking a bid question. So in my role, I respond to a lot of invitations to tender, and I produce some content which explains how our products and services work and our experience in dealing with particular problems. So I've asked our large language model what experience we've got delivering data science projects, and it's said that we've got experience in manufacturing sports, submarines and more. We've produced sports betting models. The next question is, I don't think we've actually done any. Can you cite any specific references? And it says, oh no, you haven't. You don't do that. So you can get real variability and hallucination of fact from these things. So there's something called temperature adjustment that you can use to help reduce that. But you really do need to watch out for the output that comes from these things and make sure that you double check it. Don't let this loose in your organisation without people understanding the possibilities for these kind of things to produce output which is not quite correct. This is going to be the biggest area of work that you'll need to do for your organisation in terms of adoption and training, is making sure people understand how to ask the prompts and how to understand the answers that have been produced, consume those and release them publicly safely. Okay. Any questions on any of that? Was that too technically detailed, just right? All good? Cool. In that case, no questions? I'll hand over to Andy. I think a bit ahead of time. Good.
Yeah, I didn't realise we can get that in 10, 15 minutes. You're a pro.
Yeah.
I mean, good luck with good luck to Andy.
Yeah.
All right, well, as I've already introduced myself, my name is Andy Paul. I am the founder and CEO of Fliweel.tech. Just a bit of background about who I am personally. So my experience is in data science and tech consulting. So I've had about 12 plus years. Spent a bit of time in London, also consulted to technology companies, having lived in San Francisco for about 6 years, where we were able to provide consulting advice to very large tech companies that you can think of that are in the Silicon Valley area, banks as well as fast-growing startups as well. Fliweel was almost like a side project of mine, if I'm very honest, very entrepreneurial in terms of my background, and as part of being a bit of a techie, as you can tell, I did discover that I could automate some of the tasks in the consulting firm. So I started to build very low code, no code workflows to automate those tasks. It was really interesting for me because it was not really the job that I was doing, consulting to tech, but really that was the starting point for Fliweel, where I was really interested in trying to cut cost time for the consulting firm. And when I returned back in 2021 to the UK, I launched Fliweel, which was really to help double down on this real big gap that a lot of businesses really experience, which is trying to automate some of the fat in the organization that takes a lot of time, all the grunt work in terms of back office operations. And then along came AI last year, and ChatGPT made a name for itself, even though AI has been around for a very, very long time. And really, I was very interested in how my experience in data science can tie very nicely or complement the automation services that we provided. And so really it's an automation and AI consultancy. So we've talked about ChatGPT, we'll probably talk about it for the rest of the day, but why is it really important? ChatGPT was a really interesting moment for a lot of society, I'd say, and some people would argue the next industrial revolution, believe it or not. But AI is really making a name for itself because of ChatGPT. And what we've actually shown here is just a diagram or a chart just to describe the number of days it took for these different applications to reach 1 million users. So if we start at the bottom here, you'll see Netflix took around 13 to 1400 days to reach 1 million users. And then if we go up the list, we have Airbnb at 800-900, Facebook at maybe 500 or 600, 300-400, and then you see ChatGPT, and that reached approximately 5 days. And so it really made a name for itself because of its very, very high rate of adoption. And so a lot of organizations, and personally, I think people are trying to think about what on earth is ChatGPT and why is it a very, very hot topic in industry, and also how can it be used in my personal life as well. So this was a really powerful moment for the tech industry and a lot of people in business to think about how we can double down. May I just ask the audience, if you just raise your hand, who has used this technology, ChatGPT? Great. And then who has not, just out of interest? Okay, so a couple of people. So yeah, I'd highly recommend it. It's free, and there is a free version and a paid version, and it has a very versatile set of questions that you can ask it, and it will get you not all the way there in terms of asking and prompting things around sort of contracting, proposals, maybe completing an email, but also in your personal life, maybe you want to actually book a trip and create an itinerary. Maybe you want to write a personal email or a letter to your family member. It does a very good job in terms of its versatility, and it will get you about 80-90% of the way there. I wouldn't say it would take you all the way there, and that's where human in the loop or somebody being able to review it is still a critical factor in that. Okay, so I've listed here just kind of describing the different types or common types of AI, and broken it down into sort of 5 different areas. AI is a bit blurry in the way that it can be categorized, but on the left we've got kind of, I would say, the least intelligent. This is rule-based robotic process automation, and this is really about automating processes, data entry, automating certain tasks. Then we have speech recognition, and so this is things or use cases where you're actually thinking about command control, transcription. You may have used tools where, or you've started to see maybe in your YouTube videos, videos being actually transcribed. Then we have vision recognition, and so that's really the use case for that is in the context perhaps for security authentication, or even interacting or identifying. Data science, which is more about using data to make prediction. Much of this technology is about data, but there are cases where you can use corpuses of data, or large corpuses of data, to really predict behavior from a data set. And then lastly, generative AI, and so this is kind of in the context of ChatGPT, where that would fit, where you can use it to create content, data simulation, and even perhaps recommend different products or services. So that's kind of a bit about AI, but really I think a lot of businesses are thinking about what does it mean for my business or my organization. And so what I've done here is I've pulled a few stats on the impact of using or adopting AI within your business. And the IMF, the International Monetary Fund, said that AI will affect almost 40% of jobs around the world, with up to 60% of jobs affected in advanced countries. So in developed countries, you might see that there will be, a very large proportion, or even perhaps 4 out of 5 jobs affected due to AI. And that's a huge amount. That's something that you should be actually thinking about. Sorry, not 4 out of 5, 3 out of 5. And that's a very, very large proportion of jobs that will be affected as a result of AI. But really, what is the actual revenue impact, and what is the implications from a revenue perspective when you adopt AI within the organization? And so IBM carried out a survey across a number of different organizations and really tried to numerically describe the impact on revenue as you increase your maturity level in adopting AI within your organization. So when you go from adopting AI from a piloting perspective, when you're just thinking about piloting AI, you could see around 4% increase in revenue, then through to implementing where you see 7%, operating at 10%, and then optimizing at 11.5% in terms of your revenue. So there is a direct correlation there in, adopting AI within your organization, and as you mature, you'll start to see those investments come to fruition. So that's a bit about the business case. What I wanted to do is touch on use cases, so actual tangible use cases where we can think about where AI really could help the back office. And when we think about certain use cases, there are 4 or 5 different functions here that are displayed on this slide. We've got IT on the top right hand side, where you could potentially talk through chatbots, ticket classification. In marketing, content creation is probably the most popular one today. In finance, we could use PO or invoice processing, as well as forecasting. HR, we could use AI to screen resumes, or even predict turnover in an organization. And then from a sales perspective, propensity to buy, which is the likelihood that somebody might make a purchase. And so we're going to dive into 2 or 3 of these examples in the next couple of slides, so you can kind of understand how we actually go about doing that. Okay, so here we have a case study of a popular online fashion retailer struggling to increase its conversion rates. And so what it's what this organization or this retailer is looking to do is increase its sales. It knows it has a large customer base, but it's really unsure how to leverage the data from that to improve its sales. So how do you use this data really to deploy a model to help streamline some of the decisions. So here we have a propensity to buy model, which is really about building a model to predict the likelihood or conversion that a person on the website is likely to purchase a product. So really we start with the outcome, and so this is a purchase or conversion event. Then we look at the data, so we look at things like purchase history, customer demographics, browsing history, and then we move into model development, and so this is where we get a little bit more technical in trying to understand and cleaning, well, in terms of cleaning the data, building a set of predictions, as well as modeling and measuring the performance of a model. After you select that model, we go into this deploy phase and integrate that actually into the business. But lastly, and most importantly, we go back to sort of the business case, which is categorizing those audiences and offer those products targeted to the specific audience. And so you can imagine there, you've got a set of products, you've got a 0 or 100% likelihood, and against each potential customer, and you can have a very, very targeted marketing campaign out of the result of the AI predictions and the propensity to buy for each of those prospective clients or users on the website. So that's sales. Let's take customer support. So imagine you're a non-profit providing aid to people in need. You receive a large number of donors, inquiries from donors, volunteers, or people in need of assistance. So you implement an AI-powered chatbot on the website to provide self-service support to their users. And here, the objective is to reduce processing time. I'll pause on the topic of chatbot. Chatbot is probably something we've all engaged with for the most part, right, on a website. There's generally two types of chatbots. The first is a rule-based chatbot, which you may have clicked through and then found the corner of the chatbot, and then you kind of pass on to a real person to actually deal with your problem. And that can be quite frustrating because sometimes you think that's a real conversational chatbot. It's really a rule-based chatbot. But then you've actually got conversational chatbots, which are AI-driven, where you can ask it and type very natural language, just as it might be in a chatbot, ChatGPT, for example, and it will return a fairly natural response back to and understand the context of your question. So those are two types of chatbots, rule-based and an AI conversational powered chatbot. But just coming back to this example around customer support and reducing processing time for this particular organization or non-profit, one way we can think about using AI is really through a ticket classification problem. So in the previous slide we had, if I just go back, we had three types of inquiries, one from donors, the second from volunteers, and the third from people in need of assistance. And so when we think about this ticket classification, this is about trying to triage those inquiries to those different respective teams. So you have three teams: the donors, the volunteers, and the people in need. So again, when we think about the outcome, what is the business need or the organization's priority or objective? We want to reduce processing time of these inquiries. And then we move on to the collection. So we look at the description or the textual context of the inquiry. We then look at, through a model, we understand its sentiment. Sentiment meaning maybe somebody's writing urgent, need your help. That's you need to respond to that much faster than something that may seem lower priority. And then we look at the nature of the context using natural language processing or NLP to classify the type of inquiry. Once we've deployed that, which is really an assessment of the best performing model, we integrate that perhaps into a web inquiry form. That's one example. We could put it in other places. And eventually, the last stage is really about auto-routing. So this is really triaging or auto-routing to the right, well, one of the three teams that we just discussed. So if it's an inquiry about somebody that's really urgently in need, then we can send it to the support person that can be on the ground to help. Or if it's somebody that's interested in donating, then we send it to the fundraising team. So this is another example. Hopefully it brings to life a use case for AI in an organization. And then lastly, we'll go through this really quickly, but this is more about document processing. So in document processing, this is really about trying to extract information from a document and Matt, you talked a bit about this as well. How do you extract data from perhaps a company that receives large volumes of purchase orders, maybe in a PDF format, and employees are currently manually picking out the data, right? So you've got a document you're picking out, somebody's in your team, and they're constantly copying, pasting data from one system to another, or out of that PDF into a spreadsheet. And so how can you reduce the cost or the burden from your team to remove that manual process? So this is what we call intelligent document processing, where you can use AI to essentially convert PDFs into structured data sets, and you can process that data straight into, in this case, an invoice, or into Xero or QuickBooks as an example. So again, we start with our business outcome. We want to reduce document processing costs. It takes us a massive amount of time for our organization to extract data from these documents. And then we take those documents and we read them or pass them into let's say a doc reader, which learns the contents of the document, and you identify the various aspects of the document that you'd like to extract. Once the model is trained, we can then transpose that data into a structured table, maybe that's in a spreadsheet, and you pull in the respective rates of whether that's product, quantity, pricing, etc., etc. And then from this structured table, we will then go to generating the invoice, and this is more about automatically generating that invoice, and creating those specific, flowing through the data for that specific invoice. But then lastly, and this is one really important piece here, because we're extracting data using AI, is really reviewing and approving it. And so that human in the loop is really important. That I think a lot of people think AI is there to replace your jobs. It's not. It's actually there to enhance. And if you embrace it and continue to look over the results of the AI results, you always have a person in the loop, a human in the loop, to review and approve the process. And so in this case, you'd actually review the invoice, make sure that what you've scanned from your original PDF is actually captured within your final output. Hopefully that makes sense. Okay, so on that note, we talked about human in the loop, really a critical factor. There are really important factors here that we need to think about in terms of the risks of AI. I think a lot of people have thought about AI in how it could help, but there's some areas that it could not help, and you've got to be mindful of how you use that. So one problem is that it could provide inaccurate feedback, and so thinking about hallucination, which is the idea that Matt talked about, where you've got an output, it's actually just extracted, responded in a way that appears to be right, but actually you can fact check it. So ensuring that you've got somebody in the loop that is actually checking that it's fully accurate is really important. Lack of personal touch. So I don't know if about you, but when I use AI or ChatGPT, sometimes you might find that it's a bit robotic. And so ensuring that you are there to review the nature or the tone of that writing can cause issues, because then you would suddenly, if you are sending the extract from a ChatGPT response to your client, they might, you can tell almost when a piece of text is being constructed by an AI rather than a person. Another classic example is in the schooling system. If you've got kids writing essays and suddenly you see a very, very professionally written, well-written piece of content, and that somebody else has written that, or an AI has written that, and not your child or a student. Over-reliance is also a problem as well. So I think a lot of organizations have actually thought about using AI, but I think sometimes we might get lazy, if we're honest with ourselves. And so we need to continue to monitor those outputs. And the last two are about the data. And so data privacy is really critical. You really need to be mindful of what data you're passing into some of these public chatbots or AI tools. So ensuring that you are aware of the data that you're passing through, and that you've got controls in place to ensure that you're not feeding data to sensitive data to these systems that are training on those models is really important. And then unintentional bias is more about the continuous auditing of these models to ensure that there is no bias, or there is an understanding of the bias that the model has been trained on. Okay, we're starting to wrap up. I will finish off the last couple of slides. Why do AI projects fail? I think a lot of people are interested in the topic. Some people have, even in the networking this morning, were like thinking about the Terminator showing up, and that's kind of some people are generally, genuinely scared and, frightened by the idea of AI replacing their jobs. That's kind of almost the number one fear. And the second reason is the ethics around AI, right? I'm passing it my personal data. What's it going to do with my data? Where is my data going? The other piece is around the lack of necessary data foundation. So you may have the great idea of trying to predict the propensity to buy in that use case, but you may not have the right data for it. And so understanding the data sets that you have is really important as well. And lastly, it's about failure to connect the AI initiative to a business problem. AI is a brand new shiny thing, like most technology as it comes through in its cycles. It's another shiny thing, but actually you want to start with the business problem before you start thinking about AI. And sometimes AI is not actually the solution. It might just be a case of automation, and AI is a potential add-on to that, or may complement it. And so always starting with the business problem is always the key and what we'd recommend. So as I've said, where do we begin as an organization in terms of deploying AI? Start with a business outcome, not data. Be open-minded. So as you think about AI, it can be overwhelming. So there's a lot of content online. There's a few of us around here that can also talk to it as well. But be open-minded as the possibility of a problem that you've identified and saying, this is manual, this is taking me a long time, can AI do this, solve this problem, or is there a use case for it? And then we always recommend starting small and then scaling. The worst thing you could do is spend tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of pounds, or millions of pounds into an organization on a very large deployment of AI. But we recommend always piloting it just to create a testing ground for the new technology that you're implementing. So that's the end of the content. This is a little bit about Fliweel. We've helped schools, retail stores, online, non-profits in the space of strategy and implementation of AI, RPA, integration and chatbots, as well as upskilling businesses. So if you have any questions, now's the time, or you can speak to me afterwards. Any questions? Yes?
You mentioned unintentional bias.
Yep.
What would you suggest are the things to look out for? What are the main causes for that when you're building a model?
Yeah, I think representation. So let's say you are in a manufacturing site that might be, and you're using data in it. I think understanding the sample and the manufacturing example. Let's just say there's 90% males in the manufacturing warehouse, let's just say, and you're trying to predict a certain outcome. Knowing your population that you're trying to experiment on, and ensuring there's a diverse range of people that you're predicting on is kind of one example where you would want to understand before you build predictions on there. So representation, diverse. There's a term called overfitting, which is where you might want to where you've actually got data sets. You're trying to predict on it and you're overcorrecting, and then there's undercorrecting, which is you don't have enough sample, or that's underfitting as well. So in simple terms, happy to kind of double click into that.
I think if you think about the underlying model, there's a lot of training that's done on internet-based content, and there's a lot of communities, languages, areas of the world that are very unrepresented in that base data. So if you're using the model for translation, then you can get biased output that way.
A lot of false information as well.
Yeah.
Oh, well, how much time do we have?
You've got plenty to.
Great. Yes.
Can you give any insight or examples of, probably going back to Matt's point about the answer is that this contract does fulfil our procurement standards, but yes it does, no it doesn't. At a sort of leadership level, can you provide any insight as to how AI can help decision making, confirming business strategies, that type of thing?
So you're saying, could you kind of double click on that a bit? Describe that.
Yeah. Sure. Say you're a CEO
Yep.
and you've got to make quite a big decision
Yep.
about something. Can you give any insight or examples of how AI can help you do that? What do you have to do to kind of prove that out?
Yeah, I think that's a really, really broad question to say how can you use AI to help a leader in an organization. And I think it comes down to the business problem first. So we can get as broad and use AI in so many different ways. And we'll have a little session on another tool called Microsoft Copilot. But there's also, I genuinely think that the way at least it works for us is actually trying to get very specific on a use case and saying, okay, I'm having maybe employee turnover issue, I have attrition issue in my organization. How can we build a model to predict and solve for that, or at least stay ahead of that? And so if I'm able to identify the attrition problem and I can say like Matt is about to leave the organization, how can I retain that? And so it comes back to the objective of the business, because otherwise what we'll be doing is just saying AI, but not really going to a business problem. So I'd like to kind of advise my clients that they need to think about the business problem rather than just trying to throw AI at the problem or money at the problem, which is not necessarily always the case. Yeah.
On the definition of affected on 60% of businesses being affected by AI, it's quite a negative headline, and one of the biggest fears of people is AI interrupting of recruitment. The definition of affected in that, because surely 100% of businesses can benefit from AI,
yep.
Correct?
Yep.
So just the definition of affected.
Yeah, I think the idea is that it will touch the many roles, and 60% affected in the developed nations, right? I can certainly kind of point you to the finding there, but you're absolutely right. It's going to affect almost every industry, right? Most industries, and in a positive way. If you embrace it positively, not think about it like it's a Terminator, right? And yeah, affecting it could be in a small capacity. Or a very large capacity, but it's down to ultimately the open-mindedness of an organization to say, hey, you know what, AI is there, I want to embrace that, or I'm going to just leave it there. And but the reality is, if we're not, at least my opinion, if you're not embracing it, you will be at the back of the line, and you will start to discover that your workforce is not as productive as maybe your competitors. So it's really important it's there to show you and tell a story that there is going to be impact, and are you actually thinking about AI in your organization?
I think it was on your sales slide, the process on the sales slide, where you talk about the need to clean data.
Yep.
And I just wondered if there's any research around the value in putting a lot of effort into cleaning the data before it goes into the training model versus letting the power of the foundational model handle rugby data.
Yep.
Where's the balance of return on investment?
Yeah. So cleaning data is really important. There's this term called garbage in, garbage out. So if you put rubbish data into a model, you will get rubbish results, right? And this kind of comes back to maybe ChatGPT and some of the examples we saw where it kind of hallucinates. Because it's scraped the internet, there's so much information that it's accounting for. It's not actually fine-tuned, or it's not. We aren't narrowing down on the data set that is focused on, in this case, customer data. And so some of the problems that could happen is that the data is incomplete. Maybe you've got blank fields, customer name or industry. Somebody's fat thumbed the wrong data into the wrong field, right? Those kind of nuances are really critical at the beginning of an exercise where you're doing something like a propensity model, so that you can have a high performing model. Because again, if you start putting in bad data, you will start getting bad results. So it's absolutely important that and imperative that you know what data you're feeding before you start making predictions on it. Otherwise, you will get poor results at the end of it.
Into structuring and cleaning the data
Correct.
before it goes into training model.
In that kind of example, yes. Yep. Hey, Ben.
Question really about diversity and biases as well. So I had a thought a while ago about if we keep using AI, we're just using it, we're not giving it more information, we're not So when is it going to get to a point where all the things that are coming back are things that are already created years ago? And how do we teach it new things that we can create new content?
Yeah.
Actually, it continually learns new stuff. Because if we stop creating,
Yep.
because we're using more AI, it's
Yep.
60% together. When does it get to a point where it feathers off and we're not getting more new stuff?
Yeah. So.
Someone else has created it, or we're creating it.
Yeah, that's a really good question. So the question, for those that may have not heard, how do you create new content in a world where you're using old content generated by AI? Old, but like scraped data from the internet from 2021. I think that's when the date at which the current ChatGPT model that many the free model uses. Yeah, it's a really good point. How do we create new content in a world where we're using AI to predict or create content on potentially old? AI technology has started to scrape current as well, first and foremost. So some of the technology has scraped old data, but now we've moved to a place where it can look at live internet information. So you can actually prompt tools like ChatGPT to go to a current news article from yesterday, right? It's very expensive to maintain those models, and we had some numbers there on trying to train a large language model, a model like that ChatGPT technology sits on, is very, very expensive. I think there will be a place where there will be a time where those models will get continued to be up-trained, but ultimately, as content creators, I think the New York Times is in a massive legal dispute with OpenAI right now because it's scraping their website, and the New York Times is actually a paywall website, so you have to subscribe, and so there's a lot of content providers that are questioning how can we actually monetize on our content as well. I think it's probably a space that I will continue to follow. It still continues to move, and I think some of my content I presented about 6 months ago became stale, we'll wait and see. But yeah, that's kind of the new technology is starting to scrape current sites on a prompt basis.
I think for me as well, it's also the art, design, the creative
Yeah.
side where, say, Adobe obviously created the
Absolutely.
and actually no copyright issues, all of this.
Yeah.
No one's creating new bits.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, just yesterday, I posted this on LinkedIn yesterday. Sora, OpenAI's new product called Sora. You prompt it and say, make a video, this world, this context, this background, and now you can make 60-second videos in the OpenAI module. It's pretty wild because now you're questioning kind of, no offense, but your videography teams, right? And all your content and the marketing are probably losing themselves and thinking, this is going to replace our jobs. It's not going to replace your jobs. It's going. You just, as an agency, you need to embrace it. That's the reality of it. And there's going to be parts where AI gets it right, and it will also get it wrong as well.
Can I add a point to that?
Yeah.
With AI, you've got something called a context window, which is the amount of information that you can put in your question and the amount of information that comes out from the model, the total amount. And that's not that big at the moment. I mean, it may change, but the problem with that is that models don't really have a memory about the conversation. You're constantly feeding the same information to it with a new question, and it's giving you the information back in a slightly different form. What that means is that if you're trying to write a book, for example, that's hundreds of pages long, the AI model doesn't have any concept of the entire storyline. You need a human involved in that loop to string everything together to make it into a story. And that's not going to go away very quickly just because of the costs of the computational costs for all of this.
Yep.
So I run a professional services business. In a hypothetical world where I've got a really cynical board, what would your response be to that question from those cynics to say all of this sounds great but really expensive?
Yeah, that's a really good question because there's late adopters and early adopters, right? And so there's a certain mindset that people have to change to embrace this stuff. Otherwise, you'll be behind yourself as an organization. I think showing value through pilot is the quickest, easiest, cheapest way to do it, if I'm very honest. And that's the only way, I think there's also tools like free tools like ChatGPT as well, where you can show that as an example. It doesn't cost the business any money, just their time to see its value, as an entry point to say, look, these tools exist now. Here is a use case where we can simply reduce all this effort. We can get you 80% of the way there, 70% of the way there. Our staff still need to review it, human in the loop, right? And that's I guess a free way, not trying to get us out of work, but that is the best way. And then piloting is probably the next phase of that. So yeah, that's what I would recommend.
Probably add on that as well that access to these tools is the cheapest it's ever been.
Yes.
And I suspect it's only going to get cheaper.
Exactly.
A lot of the expensive stuff we talked about is the training of the models in the first place.
Yeah.
The use cases in your business, the chances are there's a solution out there that might not be turnkey, but it might do the bulk of the work, and they've already put in that investment.
Yep.
So it doesn't have to be expensive.
Hello.
Data. We all know that data gets corrupted, even just with regular use data gets corrupted even when you PC. Who controls the data sets in these models and this AI technology? Because who's to say that's not influenced? Who controls it ultimately?
Yeah.
The internet. Nobody has control of the internet. Nobody has control of the dark web. We talk about the internet and resourcing. That's where it scrapes. But there's rubbish out there as well as good stuff.
Yeah.
So where are the constraints? Who's got the control?
Yeah.
That's the bigger picture for me. Is it's all very well to talk about these data sets and data models, but where's it coming from?
Yeah, there is a whole topic about AI policy, transparency going on right now, the UK, US, and many other countries, about regulating and being transparent about where is the data, what does it look like, and is it safe to use, and where are the guardrails or the boundaries or confines of that data. As this topic continues to evolve, regulation is starting to and will continue to be enforced. And some of the key themes are around transparency. Where's the data, right? What is the data? Where does it come from? Where is the bias, if there is any bias? I think somebody asked that question, right? And so transparency is probably going to become is already a big topic and will continue to be. And so a lot of these AI models right now will tell you there are certain parts where they are just transparent about where it's come from, where is it being stored, what the data has been trained on, and what's the context of it.
I'm all for working kind of smarter rather than harder, and for automating mundane repetitive tasks. Why wouldn't you do that? And the skill then really becomes in the prompts. It's asking the questions to get the decent data back and also put the data in. Reassurance from a kind of control perspective. I remember being back here when Aiimi held a summit post the Flexi Summit. And the one question I didn't ask at the time, which I now regretted, and I didn't want to seem like I was being negative, but it's been burning in the back of my mind since, is we talk about regulation, but we can't even control the dark web. So, we can't control what's out there already, never mind what's to come.
Yep.
And don't get me wrong, I'm not saying this from a negative perspective, I'm very pro-AI.
Yep.
But it is one of my fears.
Yep.
Is, there are people out there that won't use it for the benefit of the good and the benefit of the many. There are people out there that will use it in a bad way. I watched a program recently about a pharmaceutical company in the States, and they put into it all this data about creating a new drug with the least toxicity.
Yep.
And they did it, and they achieved it. And they came with this new drug that was kind of minimal side effects, etc. Being digital, it changed a 0 to a 1.
Yeah.
And it created the most lethal drug in the world, worse than Novichok, worse than Sarin, worse than all this other stuff that you've got. So it's that power and that control that does concern me, because let's face it, it's only going to, the adoption take up that you said. This thing's moving at a pace nobody can even envisage.
Yeah, absolutely. I was just talking about AI policy in the education sector at Bedford Modern School a couple of weeks ago, and we were talking about in the schooling system, right? Using AI, I think I may have called it out, in your write-ups, right, in your homework, and how do you create guardrails? How do you create controls. I don't think right now, let's face it, I think our legal system is probably a little bit slower than AI. AI has moved, exponentially compared to the pace at which we're moving regulation. And so, it's my duty to ensure that those risks are always continue to be displayed and made aware of to organizations that are dabbling in AI. It's going to be a topic that's going to, by the time we get regulation, we'll probably get another version of one of these tools that are going to probably do far beyond or faster, powerful, quicker, and cheaper tasks than regulation comes out. But one of the key things I would say is be transparent, always have people in the loop to review that data, and know where your data is being processed as well. So when you're thinking about feeding in data, know that you know where that data is being processed if it's being processed. I'd also say there are models out there that are open, right, where you can feed it data, it will learn from it. But then there are closed, right? So you've got your own in-house model almost, and that's your guardrail. You've got almost your own instance where you know that your data will not be processed anywhere else or go anywhere else as well. Yep. Hi.
Just perhaps join a couple of threads together and move with Ben's point about sort of the positive feedback loop that needs to happen for the models to grow. What's your thoughts on, as individuals, we're told to be very careful with our data and to lock it down as much as possible, but we need to reveal more data about ourselves for the models to become more useful. And if I might throw in a practical example, I have a very common surname, Smith. My wife's a writer, so she is out there on the internet. She shares her name with an MP. That's interesting when we phone up for insurance. We always get a couple of extra questions. A religious podcaster from the States, and a woman involved in the adult entertainment industry. So you can imagine the potential for exciting and predictable results from that rather ridiculous example, but I hope to make the point. So what's your thoughts on squaring that circle of holding onto our data, but revealing it and opening it to make the models useful?
Yeah, it's a blessing and a curse, right? You want to use tools that have scraped the internet. Your information is on the internet because you want to promote whatever writing services you have, but then suddenly it's being used, whatever the output from the AI has given has then given wrong information, right, or misleading or the wrong data. It's something that I think we need to be mindful of. Firstly, context windows are really important as well. Maybe you want to you tell the AI be more specific. So this comes into this realms of prompting the right things. I'm looking for a writer with this name, Smith, rather than saying tell me all the people in these that have the last name Smith in certain industries. So that context is really important. But yeah, it's also something that we have to be mindful of, because it is inevitable that you will get hallucination or results that could be misleading. Yeah. Hey.
Oh, you're right. I think a lot of the base level models are actually trained on Americanized data.
Yep.
So you tend to find a lot of things which come out say the American way of spelling things that organization would have said, and so on. Right? So yeah, definitely, Martin, your point is a really good one. Where does the data come from? Because it's not localized or specifically regionalized. Okay. And same thing as you, Phil. Right? Because you have to have sort of like an open set of data in order for the large language models to be trained.
Where will that point be?
Yeah. So I think GDPR is actually quite restrictive in that sense, because we won't be able to train these large language models on UK-based data. So there's a balance to be struck somewhere.
Yep.
Might be more of a question for Matt, but in terms of experimenting with those free tools out there, just to get an understanding, you talk about piracy, you mentioned ChatGPT a lot, and the limitations it has in terms of the data range. If you put in who won the FIFA World Cup in 2022, it will say that event hasn't taken place yet. What about looking at the other options out there? Like I like Claude, for example, and there's Bard, and there's Being Like AI. Should we just focus on ChatGPT? That's been mentioned a lot so far this morning. Is that the most popular and obvious one to experiment with?
Yeah, so I'm not a salesman from OpenAI, firstly. I've said ChatGPT because of the stat that I gave, which was it's the fastest adopted technology in technology history, actually. Yes, there are other tools. Bard, a very good contender, which is not only in the context of the classic chatbot environment that you see in ChatGPT, but because many users like to use Google Drive for their docs, and suddenly it has the capability to connect into your reference materials or your documentation. So there's a lot of tools out there that have a certain uniqueness in there, and in terms of the language model as well. There are a lot of tools out there. I've just used ChatGPT as an example because of my the presentation.
I was just to say, it also, I think AI is such a big word that when you start talking about AI, you talk about anything. So things like Salesforce, they're now using AI tools to help you with everything you're using Salesforce for, which obviously extracting your own data, which is nice. Miro boards now have an AI tool to summarise your post notes in Miro board. So the chances are there's a lot of tools you're already using in your business have AI capabilities to some extent, which can also help with a agnostic board or a scared board. Kind of more traditional people that are sort of scared of this term AI. I take it on. AI doesn't have to mean ChatGPT.
No.
As I say, it can be extractive AI. It can be rules-based learning. I'm sure we've all been using rules-based learning in our businesses for years, for decades. That's been around for a really, really long time, but isn't new from AI. So I think we get scared and get lost behind this massive label. Yep. But there are small things happening in the day-to-day that you might not think about. It'd be really nice to introduce it to business. Just come out, cover it and say, actually, we can do this for a long time. We've just been calling it something else. Absolutely. I mean, AI has been around for a very, very long time, even right through back to the World War. So, yes, it's not. It's just made a name for itself because certain technologies in the marketplace have actually made it accessible, super accessible and easy and free to see its value. There's going to be some other use cases in today's session. We'll talk about Microsoft Copilot. We'll talk about marketing as well, and we'll start to kind of unravel some of those different types of products that might exist and you could use.
A lot of why ChatGPT has become the phenomenon it is, and you're right, AI is an umbrella term for many, many different technologies. But it's actually specifically generative AI that I think is the thing that we're all really talking about, and I'll talk more about generative AI because that's the thing that, go back a year and a half-ish ago, became all of a sudden a tool that didn't exist before for the average consumer. But I think that's what we're all thinking about. But yes, AI is you probably interacted with AI 50 times already today in some way, shape or form. Your GPS, your sat nav, your predictive text on your phone, it's all been there for a long, long time.
Yep. Great, thank you all. I'm going to hand it over to, we have a little break, 10-minute break. We'll meet back here promptly at 10:45, it's 10:31 now. And
please do come in and grab a seat. I'm going to do a session about specifically using AI in marketing. We've had a lot of information about what AI is and its varying different forms in big business and in small businesses and different use cases. So I'm going to dive into a little bit more detail in one area, which is in marketing. So my name is Matthew Rigby-White. I'm the CEO of Qoob. We are simplest way to explain this is a digital marketing agency, but we work in a fairly consultative, strategic way. And ultimately what we're all about is empowering brands to achieve great marketing. So that is ourselves. What I aim to do today is share some of my advice and my experiences about how we're using AI in marketing and how we've seen other businesses apply AI in marketing. Get a bit of an understanding in context of where we are at the moment in the sort of life cycle really of 2 years ago, ChatGPT came to the masses. Where were we then? Where are we now? Where I think we might go in the future, and then some practical things you can go away and have a look at and maybe apply within your own businesses. I know we've got a wide range of different types of businesses in the room, and apologies, this might not be as technical as a couple of presentations that went before. The way I look at it is it's almost as if Warp Speed's been engaged in marketing terms. The concept of Web3, has everybody heard of Web3 at some point over the last maybe 5 to 10 years? It's something that's been talked about for a long time. So we're currently, I guess, we're in the era, I think, where we're finally moving into the world of Web3. It's been talked about for a long time. But why is it Web3 and not Web2? Well, Web 1 was the initial sort of iteration of the internet. It was, search engines was probably about as good as it got with the first iteration of the internet. The second iteration of the internet really came about through social media and how we use the internet in a very, very different way. No longer just about finding information. It then became about being a social a community almost, a way of connecting, sharing information and ideas. Web3 is that next iteration, it's that next step where actually the web becomes a really powerful tool, and things like adoption of smartphones over the last 10 years have been an example of how the web is now touching our day-to-day lives. You've got things like the Internet of Things. If everybody's got Alexas or Google Homes in their house, those are kind of the foundation blocks of what I see Web3 as. So there's really exciting stuff going on. Over the last 2 years, I think the last stat I saw was something in the region of around 20,000 new applications and software platforms have been built off the back of AI. So they didn't exist pre-GPT or pre-OpenAI. They're new platforms, and that's not taking into account all of the existing software platforms and applications out there that are now ingraining AI in what they do. And I think that number's probably tiny in comparison to what's actually out there these days. So, part of my job today is to say, hang on a minute, there's really exciting stuff going on. Really, really exciting stuff. We are moving faster than I think we've ever moved before. Described it as the next industrial revolution. I saw a seminar about a year and a half ago where it was described by a computer scientist as being more as having the capability of changing how we do business more than COVID did. And look how transformative COVID was in terms of how businesses had to adapt and pivot and change how we, plan our office spaces, how we hold meetings, how we do our work. So I think AI and where we are right now, and Web3 technology has the potential to really transform how we do work. But what I want everybody to just do and appease me with for the moment is just taking a step back, and it ties in with what Andy was saying, which is understanding what the problem is you're trying to solve first. And in my marketing speak language, that is about strategy. Understanding the problem you're trying to solve. Another really simple way of looking at it is, what is the why? Why are you doing this in the first place? Before you get into the how. Because if you start with the problem, then you can start narrowing down possible solutions. Strategy before tactics is the way I talk about it in the world of marketing. You need to know as a business owner where you plan to take your business over the next few years before you start looking at how much we invest in marketing, which channel, which routes to market, who are our customers, what are our target audiences. You need to do all of that groundwork in strategy first before you go out there and start marketing your business. It's the same thing with AI. So I just want to recap quickly where I think we are. So 2022, 2023. ChatGPT was launched tail end, I think, 2022. There'd been iterations before that. That was ChatGPT version 3, and then we had 3.5. And then ChatGPT-4 was when it really took off, and that became the sort of popular version of ChatGPT we know today. The reason why I've put a cat on there, not just because I love cats and I work in marketing and cats are like a meme thing and everybody, uses cats in different ways to express themselves, but that is an AI-generated cat, and it's typical of the type of thing that I think people were doing with AI when they first came across it. Playing with it, using it as a bit like a toy, really. Oh, this is cool. What can it do? Right? That was really what I saw in 2022 and 2023, and certainly when I first played with it, generating cats was kind of up there with the type of things that, everybody was doing. So, other stuff going on, by the way, because AI doesn't sit in isolation, other stuff that was going on around AI in the sort of technology world was this thing called virtual reality. I'm sure you've all, literally in the last few weeks, seen Apple's Vision product that's been launched a few years later than some of the competitors, but actually, Apple has such a huge following that I think virtual reality is going to really come back into the fore. Augmented reality, we were seeing brands using augmented reality years ago, and it's slowly getting there. Even things like, people scanning QR codes has become like the norm since COVID. A lot of things were going on around crypto as well. It was becoming really, really popular. But actually, sort of 2023, it started becoming like, oh, that's the kind of fad that's over with now. And it's interesting to see what's happened since then. And actually, crypto's really picked back up. NFTs, those around the room, put your hand up if you know what an NFT actually is. Cool, there's quite a majority. The non-fungible tokens. Again, some crazy stuff going on with NFTs, in terms of people spending ridiculous sums of money buying effectively digital artwork. And all sorts of potential practical applications, but not really getting any traction. In business generally, and certainly the conversations I was having at the time, lots of people discovering the technology, but not really sure how to react, and I would summarise it in that last line as being quite clumsy. If they did try to implement anything, it was very clumsy. Trial and error, a lot of cool stuff, basically. So if that was 2022, 2023, this is where I'd say we are now. And also I used a cat in the previous one. Here's a meme to back that up. I think, this is the feeling I get anyway, that we're now starting to move towards smart implementation. What we're seeing in the market is more prevalence with things like augmented reality, resurgence of an interest in cryptocurrency. Has everyone heard of Bitcoin? Yeah, so this is the government's plan to release their own cryptocurrency. We'll see how that goes. Smart contracts is becoming a more popular phrase. The subject of the metaverse and VR and all of this. All of this is going on around AI. Advancements in robotics, which isn't even on there. Lots of things going on in robotics as well. But what I'm seeing in business when I'm talking to business owners is that they're now starting to go, I get it. And now how can I use it? What problems is it going to help me solve? And I think that's probably why the majority, at least, of you are here today, is to understand more about how you can actually use it. So a lot more focus on implementing AI within business. Some big investment made by a lot of big tech firms in integrating AI into their products. And for me, in my little sphere of digital marketing, a lot of reworking of digital strategies, looking at how we can use AI to either deliver a better service or to implement efficiencies, or in very focused bits like Google Ads, how we can reduce wasted ad spend, right? Lots of really practical implementations. But what I think businesses really need to do is start moving. As Andy put it, looking at test cases, looking at small trials within their business, and also developing policies around AI in your business. There was a few people that hadn't used ChatGPT in the room, and we've talked about ethical issues as well. If you as a business owner decided, you know what, I want no part of this, I don't want to be involved in AI, if you've got employees, I guarantee they do, right? So whether you're on the ship or not, the people that work for you and the partners around you, they will likely be on the ship. So you really need to understand that it isn't just you making that decision for your organisation. It'll be the people within it and the culture within the business that will dictate whether they use AI or not. And they might not even tell you they're using it, right? large businesses, I've seen a few articles lately about appointing chief AI officers within their organisations, and that kind of gives you a bit of an idea as to where big businesses think, how significant they think this is going to be within their organisations. So, 2025. Let's look forward a little bit here. What do I think? I think we're going to have to wait and see, quite frankly. I think we can all make some guesses. We can look at what's going on in the market over the last year, have a bit of an idea of what might happen. The reason why I'm saying in many ways we'll have to wait and see is because I actually want people to just focus on the now and what they can do right now and look at their strategy today for adoption of AI and moving that forward. But the real reason why we can't really with confidence say what AI is going to do or technology is going to do in a year from now is because of the doubling time. You know, that's a very simple graph to understand. The time it has taken for the technology to go from the first iterations of ChatGPT to where we are today, and all the other technological advancements that are going on around it, like quantum computing, didn't even mention that. You know, all of these things are having a big impact, and they are doubling faster each time. The iterations are getting faster and faster and faster. Here's an illustrative example. So these are generated with Midjourney, if you're familiar or have heard of Midjourney. Version 1, top left, through to version 5.1. I think we're now on version 6. So even this slide is out of date already. This one's nice because it shows you some dates on there as well. Just ignore that last date because that should say 2023. But again, you see February 2022 moving right the way forward into the level of detail that we're getting in May 2023. Quite substantial change, and that's just in one area of AI technology. Text to video generation. Again, this is all generative AI. So, I kind of wanted to frame all of that in context before I dive straight into like how can we use it today in marketing. And to be honest, 30 minutes is not a long time to talk about it. And I won't. There's just no way I could do a talk all day and we still wouldn't scratch the surface really of all of the possible applications of AI just within marketing, let alone other parts of your businesses. But this helps explain. Have people come across these similar sorts of charts before? Reach, act, convert, engage. There's different variations of them, but they're generally the funnel that you'll see. And as you can see, each of those touch points, I won't read them all out, but each of those touch points is an area where AI is already being used. It's already being used. And actually, for any agencies or anybody that uses Google Ads in the room, you'll know about Performance Max campaigns, potentially, which is something that was launched a couple of years ago now, which is Google Ads, the modern way, really, of doing Google Ads. And it's all AI-driven. We don't actually tell Google who to target. We just feed it data. We feed it source information and it goes and finds those customers for us. And that's getting better with time as well. So that's the ad targeting side, but AI generated content, that's obviously something that most people in the room have probably had a play with at least. Ideation, chatbots have been mentioned further up the funnel, and even getting into things like hyper-personalization. And again, I'm going to touch on that in a moment. But that's the sort of buying cycle. I can answer questions on that in a bit. So I just want to give you a few examples. How much time are we on? 5? 10 minutes? Cool. I'm going to have a glass of water then. Yeah. 3 practical use cases, and it is just 3. There's so many, and they get progressively more complicated as we go along. So I'm trying to give a really simple example for those in the room that haven't used AI before and maybe want to go away and have a play with it, and then you're getting into more complex implementations and ways it can be used. Again, this is all just in the realm of marketing. So start with the why. I want to improve the customer experience on my website and make my knowledge accessible, right? Here's an example of how you could do that. There are lots of different ways and there are lots of different products on the market. Custom GPT is one that I've come across that's really easy to use, and that's the reason I put it up on the screen, because actually anybody that knows how to use basic online tools will be able to work this out for themselves.
Why custom GPT? Well, it is built on top of ChatGPT, first and foremost, so there's no radical technology under the hood. It is ChatGPT. But what custom GPT allows you to do, and again, this is in the sphere of marketing, is to plug in a website sitemap, for example. So lots of people over the years have invested lots and lots of time, effort, energy, and money in building out knowledge bases on their website. It might be around a particular product, it might be support articles, it might be blog content. I know a couple of people in the room, and I know they've produced a lot of really helpful, valuable content over the years. That wasn't written by ChatGPT. It's good quality content. Because you can plug a sitemap in, Custom GPT can crawl all of the content on your website. It can then build effectively its own knowledge base off the back of that, and it can use that information to help it with responses to prompts. You can also feed in documents. So if you've got tone of voice documents, if you've got offline content that isn't available on your website but you want it to take that into account, you can feed in that. You can feed in data, all sorts of stuff. You can just upload files to it, and it will then learn from all of that. And then what it spits out the other end is a chatbot. Okay, and it's actually one that you could stick on your website. I would urge caution sticking it on your website, unless you're going to put really clearly that there's an AI-powered experimental chatbot, because of all the conversations we've had earlier today and around guardrails. But what it can help you do is, if it understands your content and it understands how you solve problems and it understands your tone of voice and how you speak to customers, then it can frame responses with all of that in mind. And all of a sudden it becomes a really personalized chatbot that you can use within your organization, i.e. not public facing, to help you with writing new content, coming up with ideas or answering problems within your organization. And this was originally marketed as a chatbot, so you can just use it for that. You could put it on the front end of your website, and it can. And what's really nice about it is when it does give responses, it cites the sources, right? So we talked about citing sources earlier. Really important for the end customer to know where they can actually check that information is correct, which is quite clever that it does that. But this is so plug and play that you can go on there, you can sign up for it, have a play with it, put your website sitemap in, and you're probably up and away within 15-20 minutes. It's that easy to use. So wanted to start with that one because it's something that everybody can go and try if they want to. I don't get commission, by the way. And there are other products like Custom GPT available. There is actually a demo on that URL if you want to have a play around with it. Another example, I want my customers to feel closer to my brand when visiting my website so that they spend more. Right, okay. There are tools out there that are on the marketplace at the moment. There's some logos across the bottom there, just for Optimizely and Telemize, Dynamic Yield and VWO. Those are just some software platforms out there targeting this sort of use case. What this is all about is making your customers feel loved. It's the hyper-personalization piece that I mentioned earlier. Oh, okay. I thought you had a question, Martin, to be fair. No, 5-minute warning on that. So there's a screenshot there just showing you an example. That's the same website. It's just changed the design and the message and the color scheme and the imagery used based on who it thinks you are as an end customer. So quite powerful for those that are, looking to personalize their website experience. All these tools work in subtly different ways, and you have to feed different data sources in for it to, and they learn their models. They're learning over time. But ultimately, what this is about is making that customer feel like home when they land on your website. It feels like, I'm home. I've arrived. This is the brand for me. And we're going to see a lot more practical applications of hyper-personalization as we move forward. Again, there are legitimate concerns around GDPR and data collection, that are things that we're going to have to get past as we move forward. Google, for example, have really cracked down over the last year on implementation, finally, of GDPR. You would think it's not been around for a number of years, but they've really come down on it. So it's something to have a look at, and there are tools out there that you can investigate and play with. I have a limited budget, and I want to make sure I'm investing my advertising spend wisely. Propensity models, it's a word that I always struggle to get out of my mouth. Predicting the likelihood to buy. This is where sales and marketing cross over. Imagine your sales team, if you have a sales team, let's just assume you do, you've got a bank of salespeople and you've got thousands of contacts in your list that you could be calling. Like, do you think it'd be really great if they could know at any one time that the 100 people in that list that are most likely to buy right now? From a marketing perspective, we're working within advertising budgets, so we get allocated a budget that we can spend, and we want to get the best results out of that spend. Now, if somebody's got a very low propensity to buy, i.e. they're just not interested in your product, they've got no intention of buying from you whatsoever, do you want to waste advertising budget on those people? Equally, the other end of the spectrum, there's people out there that are ready to buy from you, and actually they're going to buy from you. Whether you market to them or not, they're going to come to you when they've got that need. They're going to buy from you. They won't go anywhere else. People who are Apple fans are probably people who have a high propensity to buy from Apple, right? They're quite loyal following. I'm a Samsung fan, so I would never go anywhere else. But those people that are raving fans are probably people with a high propensity to buy. So you don't really want to spend a lot of money advertising to them either. It's the people in the middle, the people that could be swayed one way or the other. They're the people you really want to invest your budget in. So if you had £100,000 and you were splitting that 3 ways, you're wasting at least 2/3 of your investment. If you put that £100,000 into the medium category, the people that could be swayed, all of a sudden you're getting return on investment. Pecan is a solution out there, and this is why I said they get progressively more complex to actually implement. Pecan is one that I've come across and we're experimenting with at the moment, where you can plug in data sources and it will try and do some predictive analysis for you to give you some helpful insights. But this is where you're getting to needing to be able to understand databases and structures and how they work and how to query data and how to clean data. And that's where my fellow speakers are way more experienced than I am. I just want to talk about generative AI types. That's a big long list of types on the screen there. Are we at 2 minutes now, I imagine? Yeah. Content ideation, ChatGPT, Gemini. If you want to take a picture of that, those are basically in brackets tools that you can do that with. And there is some crossover. Because the reason why there's crossover is we're now moving into something called multimodal models. This is where we're seeing ChatGPT. When you first started working with ChatGPT, it was the most rudimentary AI chatbot there was. It was ask a question, get something back, ask another one, get something back. You can now upload images to ChatGPT. You can have it generate images natively within ChatGPT. You can upload spreadsheets and get it to analyze data. It's doing more and more and more. So by multimodal, we mean taking as many of these different use cases as possible and building them into a single model. And I think we're going to talk about Copilot in a bit, and I think that's an area where we're going to see that becoming more and more powerful. Any on there that you're like, what the heck is that? Any examples on there? Okay, must all make sense. Right. But generally, it's put something in, get something out. Right? So, I'm going to wrap up, but I just want to finish. I talked about some use cases, some things you can go and have a look at. There are loads. We could talk all day. And I touched on having a strategy before you do anything. And Andy also made a point of saying have a business problem. But for me, before you do absolutely anything, just remember, particularly if you're working direct to consumers, but actually people, period. So other business people buy from people. What they care about most is trust and privacy and authenticity. We have seen a movement across, we've all seen the cases with Facebook around privacy, Cambridge Analytica, all of these things. Privacy and my data, it's mine, I own it, let me keep hold of it, you're not allowed it. That is the sentiment behind consumers at the moment. So we need to be aware of that, because if we're looking at hyper-personalization, what's the first thing they're going to think? How do you know that? How do you know that about me? Propensity to buy. God, how did he know to phone me up right now? So we need to just be really aware of this, because it's really exciting, but we can actually do harm if we're not careful to our reputations with consumers and other people. And authenticity. In a world where everybody is generating everything with ChatGPT, big statement, but there's a lot out there. be authentic. And it's really easy to fall into the trap of going, well, ChatGPT can just write that for me. And that's fine, right? That's fine. If it's going to do 70, 80% of the work for you, but you're going to do that bit on top, or might be 95% and 5% if it gets better and better. Just remember you've got to be authentic as a brand, because consumers can see through ChatGPT. I don't know if you've ever received an email and thought, pretty sure that's been written by ChatGPT. All of a sudden it loses meaning, right? Well, okay, they don't really care about me that much. So authenticity is really, really important. So questions then. How long have we got for questions? Like a minute? Yeah.
I agree with what you said about like content marketing. Can you just scroll back to the image of the cat, big cat?
The big cat?
Yeah, the big cat. Right. So
we are going way back.
There's a lot of cats. So if you
It's the fact you had to specify, sorry. That one.
Right. So if we look at this, how much ChatGPT is in light. If you actually look at the cat there between the eyes, there's an orange.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so it's not the silver bullet that is going to happen. So this is one of the issues. And obviously with the investors' hat on, right? They're not going to want to invest in companies that say we're the new next AI thing.
Yeah.
Right. So I agree with the content marketing, but you have to be aware. You know that image. You know it's occluded between the two eyes. So it does very specific things very, very well, but you can't recreate the same cat twice, identically.
Yeah, but I think just bear in mind, this is probably a year or so ago. Obviously, Midjourney's moved a long way, as I sort of showed in the later slides. I think, you know, the reason why I wanted to talk today, and why not like in operations or in finance, right? Why did I come along as a marketing person? Now, the reason is that we've been looking at AI for a couple of years, right? We're not AI experts. I really would stress that. I'm not an expert in AI, I'm an expert in marketing. But marketing, if you look at the output of the early forms of ChatGPT, content, right? Marketing people produced probably the most content, in terms of professionals anyway, and for business and for consumers, that it became a really powerful tool. And because it's on the internet, again, those of us who work in digital marketing, clients are looking at us and going, do you know anything about this? And that's why we're interested, and that's why we're riding the wave at the front. But I don't profess to be an AI expert.
No, I agree. I've sold prompts already, online, physical prompts, but I think it's kind of technology, especially with the developers in the room, it's not the silver bullet just yet, and make people aware,
Yeah, I've got some interesting stories about people using AI for programming and development, and some surprising outcomes, including my own. What I would say, just add final point, and then I'll finish because Martin's giving me the eyes. We were earlier over. So I know of an agency in Europe that's got 200 plus staff, so quite a reasonably large agency in terms of digital marketing. And they produce somewhere in the region of 4,000 articles per month within their organisation. And each one of those articles during COVID times was taking around 4 hours to produce. So you're talking 16,000 man hours there, person hours to produce. They've now got that down to 20 minutes per article. So when we're talking about 60% of people being affected, another way of looking at that is 60% efficiencies gained within organisations. And if business leaders can get their heads around 50% efficiency gains and what that might mean to their profit margins, then I think it's understandable why you can see big businesses starting to adopt it. I'm going to close there because it's your turn to speak. I'll get us back to where I was. Thank you.
I think can everybody
hear me? Yes, it's been popping.
All good, wonderful. My name is Lionel Naidoo. I'm the director and co-founder of a business called Plug-in Information Systems. We're an IT managed services business, and we specialize in helping small and medium businesses with technology challenges. I'm going to spend just a second just bringing up another presentation, if that's okay. Thank you. This morning, thank you for attending. This morning I'm going to introduce a product called Microsoft Copilot, or Copilot for Microsoft 365. So most of you have heard of ChatGPT, right? How many of you heard of or has dabbled with Microsoft Copilot? Fantastic. So most of you know a little bit about it. You may have seen Microsoft's blurb out there, may have even tried to use it. And it's only until last month licenses became publicly available. Some of you who have been in big enterprise, who have been part of the early adoption program, may have already had some experience in using Microsoft Copilot. But Microsoft Copilot is the AI assistant now under or powering most of the products found in the Microsoft 365 suite that most of us use. Anybody not use Microsoft 365? Okay, just one person. So it's a good start. The platform shift to AI is well underway. I think we all have understood that this morning. And just as customers turn to technology to help them to make the shift to remote and flexible working, they're now turning to Microsoft to help them understand how this new era of AI is going to change work yet again. We've long relied on data to help us understand where this work is going. And now we do that through the Microsoft Work Index. Some of you may or may not have heard of the Microsoft Work Index. That tells us exactly how productivity is being used within businesses. And then we use productivity signals from Microsoft Graph and also labor market trends from LinkedIn. Most of you know that LinkedIn is a Microsoft company. So there's lots of data aggregation to be able to get us to this work trend index. So what we found, based on the research Microsoft's conducted, 64% of employees don't have enough time or energy to do their work. You all agree? Right. The primary causes of this time and energy drain are things like searching for information and navigating inefficient meetings. Employees reported spending 60% of their time on communicating, coordinating, and leaving just 40% of time for doing creation, deep thinking and collaboration tasks. We all experience the volume of data, emails, chats, that's just completely outpaced our ability to process all this stuff coming at us every single day. And every minute we spend on this thing called digital debt is a minute we're not spending being creative. Okay, and we know that creativity nowadays is the new productivity. Digital debt is more than just an inconvenience. It's really starting to impact on business. Nearly 2 in 3 people say they don't have enough time and energy to do their job. And the same employees are more than 3.5 times more likely to struggle with innovation and strategic thinking. So I think we saw a slide earlier from Andy talking about adoption. But this is now not an adoption to 1 million users, this is an adoption to 100 million users. It took the mobile phone 16 years to get to that point. It took the internet 7 years to get to 100 million adopters. Facebook, it's been around for a long time, took them 4.5 years. ChatGPT, 3 months to 100 million adopters. Absolutely phenomenal in terms of technology adopted. It is the fastest rate of adoption ever experienced on the planet. So Microsoft released this fantastic product called Copilot. Okay, your AI-ready assistant at work. So Copilot is being branded as a product that can unlock productivity, unleash creativity in the for millions of people who use the Microsoft 365 application stacks of Word, Excel, Teams, PowerPoint. So this presentation is quite video heavy because I think the videos really encapsulate exactly the point I'm trying to get through. So let's have the first one.
Straight to the top, never going down, don't wait for the drop. The same now, paved the way to snakes and fakes and chased out back to back. back, I changed the pace now. I had to stack the cash until the race out. Straight to the top, never going down, don't wait for the drop.
Brilliant. There we go. So that was a quick demo of how Microsoft is pitching Copilot for Microsoft 365. I will go on later to show you how Copilot is used in some of those individual applications to show you how you can become more productive. But Copilot for 365 combines the power of the large language model. So this is ChatGPT. It then combines that with Microsoft Graph. And those of you who don't know what Microsoft Graph is a gateway application that Microsoft makes available where it allows you to index all the information you store within the Microsoft ecosystem. So that's emails, chats, SharePoint, Loop, Teams. All of that information is made available to the large language model using this technology called Microsoft Graph. Then that technology goes on to underpin the Microsoft 365 stack and all the applications within that ecosystem. And it's then combined with the power of referencing data out on the internet. So what does this mean? It means you can be more creative in Word. You can be more analytical in Excel. You can become more expressive in the PowerPoint slides that you develop. More productive in Outlook to help you manage your day. And of course, more collaborative when you're using Microsoft Teams. So here is just a quick list of the popular products that Microsoft Copilot sits behind. That's Word, Excel, PowerPoint, Outlook, Teams, and this new product, Microsoft Loop. Anybody using Microsoft Loop at the moment? If you aren't, there's a really great product in the Microsoft stack that allows you to collaborate with team members on new ideas, new projects, brainstorming, that type of thing. And secondly now, Copilot is built on Microsoft's comprehensive approach, firstly to security, to compliance, privacy, and responsible AI. So what am I saying? We're not going to get Terminator 1 or Terminator 2 coming out the back of this technology, right? This is purely designed to help you become more productive and efficient at work. So here's a very quick overview of the mechanics of the Microsoft Copilot system. It's fairly straightforward, but let's have a quick look.
Microsoft 365 Copilot is powered by what we call the Copilot system, a sophisticated processing and orchestration engine. It harnesses the power of three foundational technologies: the Microsoft 365 apps, that's Word, Excel, PowerPoint, Outlook, Teams, and more. The Microsoft Graph, that's all your content and context, your emails, files, meetings, chats, and calendar. And a large language model, or LLM, a creative engine capable of parsing and producing human-readable text. All accessible through natural language. It starts with a prompt from you in an app. Copilot pre-prompt AI checks, security, compliance and privacy reviews, and command generation. Finally, Copilot sends a response to the user and commands back to the apps. Copilot iteratively processes and orchestrates these sophisticated services to produce a result that feels like magic.
There we go. I hope that made a whole lot of sense in terms of how, when you ask Copilot to perform an action for you, what happens behind the scenes. Okay? So all of this allows Copilot to save you time, energy, get more work done, and most importantly, generate innovative ideas. Okay? I'm going to introduce Microsoft 365 Chat, which is the evolution to Bing Chat. If any of you have been playing with Microsoft's AI system, Microsoft Bing Chat has now become Microsoft 365 Chat, which is underpinned by Copilot. So here we go. Here's a demo on Copilot and 365 Chat.
Introducing Microsoft 365 Chat, a powerful new capability in Microsoft 365 to solve your most complex problems at work. Let's say you're a marketer at a national chain of home improvement stores, and you need to get the latest on the store opening. You start the day with Copilot, asking what's hot in your inbox today. It does some thinking and gives you an overview of the most pressing items. Great. Looks like the new store opening plans could use your attention. Let's dive in deeper there. Copilot combs through all your recent emails, chats, documents, and meetings, whether you attended them or not, to get you up to speed in moments. It didn't just summarize a single document. It knew what sources to pull from and what information to extract from each. Next, you need to do some market research. Let's say you want some details on square footage and the proximity of competitors to your new location. M365 Chat scours the web, and within seconds, it finds everything you're looking for. And it includes references, so you can easily fact-check the results. You're curious, how does this stack up against the other stores you opened in the past year? Copilot figures out which stores you mean, crunches the numbers, and gives you the answer. Next on your to-do list, finalize the date and speaker for the opening event. You missed the last meeting, and this might have come up in the conversation. Copilot's got you covered, getting you up to speed in seconds. Looks like it was a dynamic discussion, and it's your responsibility to make the final decision. To do that, you need to understand all the factors at play, including the implications they have on your grand opening timeline. Copilot extracts the relevant details and puts them in an organized table, which helps bring the full picture into view.
That's crazy. Okay. So now we're talking about all the content you engage with, all the people you engage with, all the documents you write, all stitched together in one place where you can get some genuine answers. And that's how the Microsoft 365 Chat is poised. It's poised to sit on top of everything that you do, which is over and above using Microsoft Copilot within the singular applications, which I'll go on to show you now. Okay, so let's check out Copilot in Excel. And what it allows you to do, and briefly you'll see in this video, it allows you to analyze trends and create professional looking data virtualization in seconds.
You start by asking Copilot to analyze the data and give you 3 key trends. Within seconds, you've got what you need. But you want to drill in. You ask Copilot to follow up question about one of the trends. Copilot creates a new sheet, helping you better understand what's going on with this customer. You ask Copilot to visualize what contributed to the decline in sales growth this period. Copilot adds a little color to make the problem jump off the page. Now you want to dig deeper and ask a follow-up question. Copilot not only answers your question, it creates a simple model of your scenario, and even asks if you want to learn more about what it did, with a step-by-step breakdown. Finally, you can ask it to create a graph of your projected model. Copilot turned a sea of data into clear insights and actions.
There you go. As you've witnessed, Copilot in Excel. What does it do? It puts all those rich capabilities of Excel at your fingertips. Zero learning. You ask the question, and it gives you that functionality. It generates models based on the questions that help you explore your data without modifying that data. So suddenly, you become the numbers person, right? So let's now take a quick look at Copilot in PowerPoint. So have you ever had that feeling of having just low creativity and you're looking for that kind of little bit of inspiration, right? You sat there thinking, I don't know how I'm going to tackle this. I don't know how I'm going to make this look impressive. So let's see what Copilot in PowerPoint can do.
Now let's say you're getting ready for your customer pitch meeting. Everyone is at a moment when they wish they could turn their proposal into a customer-ready presentation without having to start from scratch. Well, guess what? Now you can. Using just your own words, Copilot can translate Word into PowerPoint, and it can also translate PowerPoint into a Word document. Now you have a professional-looking presentation that you can hone and polish. Let's say you want to add a slide. Give Copilot some quick instructions. There it goes, ready for you to review. So this slide is too wordy. Let's ask Copilot to make it more visual. I'll give it a few seconds. And check this out. Copilot can even animate the slide. It gives it a professional design treatment in a single click. But it doesn't stop there. Copilot can even generate speaker notes. Now I'm serious, speaker notes. It's not only a time saver, it's helping me be a better presenter and close this deal.
Completely remarkable. I couldn't do that in that time. Hands up. I just could not do it. Copilot becomes your storytelling partner. Okay? It transforms these existing written, boring documents into fully complete decks of presentations with speaker notes included. As you saw, it can start a new presentation from a single prompt or outline, all with the ease of natural language, just talking to it. Okay, so we're turning these words into genuinely productive outcomes. Okay, so Copilot in Word is the next one I want to introduce to you, and it transforms every part of the creative process. And it's, any of you experience a product called Designer in Excel or Word? Okay, so it's a new product. But Microsoft now is incorporating Designer with Copilot. Okay, so Copilot uses the context of your content to propose stock visuals in the chat, and it can upload and customize your own images for a more personal touch. Okay, so let's have a quick look at this one.
When you've written a paragraph in shorthand, you can highlight it and click Rewrite. Copilot then offers several alternate options to choose from that are all written professionally, and it can translate wordy or complex paragraphs into digestible visualized tables. You can even use Copilot to add a column with extra data, which it can complete automatically. Copilot also makes you the expert on any document. Simply ask a question about the content, and Copilot will provide a concise response.
There we go. So even if you're writing a document and you're sitting there thinking, well, what are the questions the target audience going to ask? You can ask Copilot to see if your document will return the results that people are looking for, just by asking it whether it meets those audience's needs. Right? Extremely powerful stuff. And I left the best for last, really. And that's Copilot in Teams, because everybody's using Teams at the moment. So imagine you have an appointment that conflicts with your weekly business review. What do? You choose one or the other normally, don't you? But what if you could do both? With Copilot, you can opt to follow a meeting and summarize what you missed. Okay? So let's have a quick look.
Imagine you have an appointment that conflicts with your weekly business review. What if you could do both? With Copilot, you can opt to follow a meeting. After the meeting ends, Copilot will summarize what you missed. You'll get a notification in Teams when the recap is ready. This recap will highlight content that was shared, summarize notes, and any action items for you or others whose names were mentioned. You see that one of your customers was discussed, and you want to learn more. You can ask Copilot clarifying questions, and it provides a detailed response. It can tell you why a certain decision was made, and gives you helpful context. You can even ask Copilot what other solutions were considered. And it provides citations from the transcript, so you can see where Copilot drew these conclusions. It's a huge time saver. So that was pretty cool. But the real magic of Copilot happens during a live meeting. Let's say you're in a meeting with your team. You can ask Copilot to summarize the meeting so far. You can see how it summarizes who said what points were made, and it's really capturing the spirit of the discussion. And as the meeting progresses, you can check in on where people stand. You can even ask Copilot what questions are unresolved. It's just amazing to see this happen in real time during a meeting.
Okay, I'm going to unpack that a little bit more. Okay, so anybody got experience with recap in Teams? Okay, so if you're a Teams user and you have a Teams professional license, you have the ability, or Teams has the ability, to provide a recap of a meeting that you attended. So that's about transcribing the meeting, making some meeting notes, and creating some action plans. You saw a little bit of that. What Copilot does is takes that one step further. It takes that meeting recap, it takes the transcription, it takes the video, it takes the presentation, and makes it available as a resource that you can query. So this is a meeting you've not attended. Points were made and questions were asked. It asked decisions about customers. It was even able to give you the sentiment and feeling of the other members that contributed in that meeting. Okay, this is going back to large language models and the tone, sentiment, so it's even able to detect. So if I said in a meeting, I'm not quite sure whether we should spend £1 million on this project, okay, it will pick up the unsurety or the sentiment of my unsurety within that sentence. So it's becoming really, really powerful. So this is the intelligent recap. So if you are a Microsoft Teams premium user, you have this ability already. So intelligent recap is a great way, it's a great experience to get you started, and it's built around, and it's an automated tool for everybody. So any of the meetings you attend, you could have this assistant creating this recap for you. And then when you power that with Microsoft Copilot, you can get so much more value out of it. So I'd like to provide a bit of transparency as to how Microsoft is exploring the business value that's coming out of Copilot. And that's done through understanding its value, all up value, its value by workflow, and its value by role and function. Okay? So users were surveyed in the Microsoft Copilot Early Access program. As I mentioned before, for about 6 months it was under an early access program. And Microsoft decided to do a robust survey to understand what was the sentiment. And this is what they learned. They learned for users using Copilot for meetings and drafting documents, overall they reported that their productivity gains and time savings consistent with the productivity and gains that the developers experienced when they were developing the product. So what does that mean? Copilot users were more productive and they were able to complete their work faster. Copilot improves on the quality and the creativity of the work output. And Copilot is shifting how users spend their time, most critically. We also wanted to understand how valuable Copilot was to employees. And early users that worked with Copilot told us that they didn't really want to go back to working without it. And here are some of the stats. 77% didn't really want to give it up at all. And most people said they would rather have access to Copilot than a free lunch every month. Right? And 30% of people even say that access to Copilot would influence their employer. Okay, so this is how powerful AI is now becoming. So how do you get started? Okay, you can get started by using the free version of Copilot. It's generative AI and you can chat to it online by going to copilot.microsoft.com. Secondly, if you are a Microsoft 365 user already and you have an E3 license, an enterprise license, you get the free version, but you also get an element of data security around that, which means that if you're using Copilot with work information, so anything that's IP protected, then Microsoft will guarantee the confidentiality and the data security around that. And thirdly, you can use the Microsoft fully fledged product, here we go, which is Copilot for 365, that embeds itself in all your products and applications that you're using from Microsoft and references all the data stored within your Microsoft tenant, so all your emails, chat, documents, presentations, and company information. And those are the three versions of Copilot available at the moment. So I'm just going to do a quick deep dive on how the data is protected. Copilot is an AI-powered web chat with commercial data protection. That's the key thing, commercial data protection. Copilot does not save your chat prompts, and Microsoft does not have eyes-on access to your chat data. Okay? And crucially, the prompts and the chat data you provide into Copilot is not used to train the AI model that Microsoft uses. So complete data protection being offered at the back of it. And it's a great step for customers who want to introduce AI into their organization in a very, very safe way. Okay, so if this is your first dabble in productivity, this is the way you want to go about doing it, because you know that that data is completely secure and won't be leached. So there we go. That's Copilot in Microsoft 365. Thank you very much. Anybody have any questions? All right, go for it.
So it can access all of your files?
All of your files stored in your Microsoft tenant.
Okay, within your tenant. Okay, so I'm the CEO of the business. I have a senior leadership team.
Yeah.
We have a dedicated SharePoint site where we can all access that information, but nobody else in the business can access that. So if I rolled out Copilot across all of my staff, and theoretically it has access to that data, could my staff find out information that's in the management drive? Is that something that could come out?
So there's a little bit of work we need to do. The premise of the Microsoft Copilot system is to produce results that a person has eyes-on access to. So what do I mean by that? If I'm a user in an organization and I have read-only or the ability to access a folder, what Microsoft Copilot does, you ask the question to Copilot, Copilot goes to Graph, generates results, goes to the large language model, but crucially, before that data is sent back to you, it goes back to Graph to see whether you have the necessary access to that information. And if you do not have access to that information, it will not appear in the results. Okay? So if you're not part of the senior executive team or the board, it will not show you results from that data subset. But the key is to lock the data down before you embark on that journey. Yes. Yeah.
Missions in place across.
Absolutely. So Dragon IS as a solutions provider has a Copilot practice that we help create that readiness before you go and turn on Copilot for everybody within your organization. So we check that the checks and balances are met. Anything else?
A silly question probably. When it's interpreting the data from like the meeting, it's like if you missed a meeting or whatever,
yeah.
Does it differentiate the language used? So if you're looking at a live meeting, then things like swear words and stuff like that that people might use to express, and then it's capturing a point that someone made. Is it then presenting it back that way to say that I said that's effing unbelievable?
It's transcribed, but it's not regurgitated, so it's redacted. So the sentiment is carried, but the actual word's redacted. Right? So it's almost kind of a little bit of business cleansing that goes on.
So I've been a user of Fireflies for a while, which does a similar thing, but it's not part of the Microsoft ecosystem.
Yeah.
And it has its quirks, joined meetings that I'm not even in, and people are like, what is this thing that's just joined the meeting? So my question is, there's an option there to follow a meeting.
Yes.
I can't make that meeting, but I really want to know what was discussed in that meeting. So I hit follow. Those people who turn up to that meeting, are they aware?
They're aware you're following it.
Yeah.
You do not appear as an avatar, as one of the members actively participating in the meeting, but in the meeting itself, under the description, we all know that Matt is following the meeting.
So, and is it really obvious? Now, the reason why I ask is, workplaces can be political places.
Yes.
And colleagues that aren't there physically in the presence can be talked about. And is there a risk within organisations that we create clashes where people don't realise that this thing's listening to them? And I think it's an educational thing potentially, and that's why it's really, really important.
So you, in that meeting, will be listed as an attendee.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's very, very prominent that you are, although you're not physically there, the contents of that meeting will be made available to you, and that's done by various different mechanisms. That meeting is recorded, so when you join the Teams meeting and you hit the record button, it lets people know you're being recorded. Okay, so by virtue of the fact that it's held in this way, people are made aware that A, that meeting is recorded, B, the meeting's transcribed, and it's got some absent people that are actually in that meeting as such.
So you need to give everybody a pseudonym then?
Well, okay. Chief Whipcracker.
I've used the Firefly application in summary of meeting, and some of the stuff that comes out with is absolute nonsense.
Yes.
Hilarious as well.
Yeah.
It doesn't really kind of my northern accent was known, maybe I need an interpreter, but you know. Some of the
I think you'll be pleasantly surprised to see how Copilot works within the Teams environment. It's phenomenal. I'm not just saying it, but honestly, it is phenomenal.
I can't stand Teams. I think it's just too grumpy. But where I think there's an application with this, is there a link or plug-in to the CRM systems like HubSpot, Salesforce, also Microsoft Dynamics, particularly where I might get an opportunity as from a client? I don't want to have to copy and paste into all the different spreadsheets. I want to be able to respond at point made, point source from email.
So I'm not too sure about the specific the specific plugins, but I know that a plugin for Dynamics is currently being worked on. Okay, and I think that's called Copilot Sales for Dynamics, and that's something that soon will make its way as a plugin. So although it's Copilot, that's basically Copilot for Dynamics, but Copilot for Dynamics will work its way into if you license for it, it'll work its way into integration into Teams.
Yeah, I think you mentioned one point that was very interesting for me, that is responsible AI.
Yes.
Because I can see many ways that this Copilot can go on. Like, for instance, a boss might start querying, are my employees productive? Are they actually querying you enough? Are they swearing? Or can you go for the legal? Like an employee just make a complaint, they say, this is all the evidence that you have no reason for this, or things like that. I don't know what's the framework of responsible AI to understand this, and how do you see this going, maybe that could be prevented in the wrong way?
Okay, so that's slightly a bit of an ethical question here, but that's actually out of the remit of responsible AI, and I'll explain to you why. Responsible AI is really about the governance around the way AI is developed as a product, is developed as a technology. What you were talking about actually is addressed by another product is the product we've been talking about, Microsoft Graph. So if anybody's aware of the Microsoft ecosystem, Graph already exists. So everything that happens within meetings, within emails, within anything that happens with your 365 tenant, you are already capable of asking Graph via an API those questions you've been asking already. So the ability to be able to understand productivity and understand what's going on in an organization has been made available now for a very, very long time, and is already available in the Microsoft Graph AI. Okay, so those kind of specific questions is not really an AI type question. It's more about what kind of data can I query that sits within the Microsoft ecosystems. So that's the transcription of the meetings and people swearing and using bad language and all of that stuff. That stuff you can get already by querying the Microsoft Graph AI, which is outside the remit of AI, right?
What I meant is the responsible part is when AI takes the decision of firing people or something, because this could be an autonomous task of the future.
Yep.
You might, as boss, want to have a report every month of lower productivity, and then the AI takes the decision to tell you this employee is not performing, but then the criteria might be obscured for the boss.
I can see where that's going, but that's one more it's more of a legal challenge, that one. And it's the thing we're all facing at the moment about automated decision-making processes. So if you've delved into GDPR, for instance, there's already regulation that says how you can use AI and automated, or how you use the automated decision-making process. So whether that decision-making process is rules-based, so you're applying for a credit card, okay, do I turn you down based on a rules-based automated decision-making process? It's no different to an AI automated decision-making process. So that framework already exists. It's whether and how businesses choose to operate within that framework, right? Just because it's there doesn't mean you're allowed to use it or whether it'll stand up in court, right? Because there is already an existing platform that exists to regulate that kind of area. Sorry, just one other back, Chris.
So from an Outlook point of view, two parts to this question, I guess. One, could a manager who has oversight of a shared inbox analyse average response rates of the teams to kind of manage that kind of performance? And secondly, could it analyse over the course of, say, 12 months, the amount of touch points with a particular client, so that you could see this is how much time we're spending on the client, this is how much we charge you the amount of free tools required.
Okay. The answer is yes and no. It's not an exact science. If you wanted to know in Outlook the number of touch points, for instance, and the number of conversations spent with Andy Paul, it will give you that and quantify it in terms of the number of conversations. What it's not going to track is how long you spent writing that email or how long you spent conversing in that trail. You'll get an idea of flutter, of activity, but what you won't get is necessarily that specific metric about the amount of time it took. Okay? Sometimes a response, you could have 15 responses that took 1 minute, or you can have 3 responses that took 3 hours. Okay? It's not going to differentiate at that point, that specific metric you're looking for.
Got a question?
Oh, sorry, go on. Yeah.
The licensing, do you need $30 a month to do all of this stuff you're talking about with the transcribing for the meetings, joining, the bot joining a Teams meeting? Or
Yes.
Is that available? Oh, okay,
No.
so it's not available in M3.
Worth pointing out, it's an annual license.
Yes, it's not paid monthly. It's annual. But ask yourself the question, for $300, 250 quid, okay, for an entire years of AI assistant, would you be able to buy that anywhere else? Okay, I sat with a customer and put a presentation together, a 10-slide presentation on something very, very specific to their industry. It took me 15 seconds to prompt, and it took another 15 seconds to develop. And the customer's response to me, because that would have taken me personally more than 2.5 hours to put together myself. So in one instance of the use case of the application, we've demonstrated return on investment, right?
No, I thought it was $30 a month. Which,
Yeah. Annualized.
With the gentleman to the right there about quantifying time, actually in the metaverse, you can actually put payment flows on in the metaverse, and it exists as business environment. So you don't have to leave this place, you can tell the client directly, it's premium. You have your free 15 minutes like consultation. So that technically already exists. It's just not Microsoft, unfortunately. So.
Yeah.
Yeah,
okay.
Just adding on that, is there an extension to non-Microsoft applications? Is there a plan potentially for that to open up for other tools or applications? Is it just Microsoft?
At the moment, it's all in the Microsoft ecosystem, simply because to leverage the transmission of the data in and out of the various different bits that make up that ecosystem, it needs hyperscale environment. So your data has to be within an appropriate environment for it to be handled. There's already a bit of talk on linking hybrid, if you have a hybridized environment, so you might have a server with a data store locally. There's talk about Microsoft maybe creating a semantic index of that data so you can reference it. Sorry, you were going to add a point to that.
That's exactly what Aiimi does. So
Yeah.
one of the big problems with adopting Copilot is that it's focused on the ecosystem of Microsoft. So if you want to ask a question and it needs input of data that's in SAP or Salesforce or those kind of things, you need to get that information into the graph.
Yeah.
So Aiimi's product set deals with building that index and answering those questions out regardless of ecosystem. But one of the things that we're also talking to Microsoft about is being able to build that index and then feed the graph with that information. So there are things that are coming, but you do have to consider with Copilot as it stands right now, the information is in the Microsoft ecosystem.
Yeah. So it's an exciting time because the stuff Aiimi is doing is now will allow you to take different data sets. So bespoke CRM applications, for instance, might be something you really want to throw Copilot at. But how do you get that information into Microsoft Graph and Aiimi is the people to speak to when you're trying to do that kind of thing? Cool.
I know most people in the room are using Microsoft, but it is worth pointing out that then Google are doing this as well.
Yes.
It's very similar. Someone mentioned Bard earlier. It's actually
Gemini
now.
Yep.
As of early this week, wasn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Or late last week? Yeah, early this week. So yeah, it's one to keep an eye on as well. If your workspace users or Google users, similar, very similar concept, but it's obviously on their suite of tools.
Absolutely. There we go. Any more? Thank you very much. go back to...
I guess all of our jobs are gone, and we can use Copilot to do all of our work. Is a summary. We do nothing. No, I'm joking. Thank you for your time. I wanted to just start wrapping this up. If I could awkwardly hold you for 60 seconds, please scan this survey or QR code just for the organisers to see and just get really honest feedback on how you experienced this event. We may consider doing something in the future, hopefully. As this evolves, I'm sure a lot of people will be interested in how AI is going to evolve with it. So if you're interested, we'd love to kind of get that feedback caught into the survey as well. Yeah, we'll wait for a couple of seconds for you to complete that.
You can check those on the way out.
Did any of you use AI to actually produce your slides?
Ooh. I was going to actually ask. Yeah, there you go. Yes.
I would have done.
It was funny seeing Lionel put up his Microsoft PowerPoint for that and took our Google Slides. It's like, this guy definitely is a Microsoft guy. Great. Well, that's it. We've got this space available for the next half an hour or 40 minutes or so. So if you'd like to float around and have a cold drink, hot drink, and ask any questions to us, feel free. But thank you for being here, and yeah, speak to you soon. Let us know if you have any questions.
Thank you.